What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? Let's see. Put the chat out. Hey, Tuesday? Yes, Tuesday. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? YouTube, are they finally showing my stuff to people? I think the censor guys are at home during a snowstorm. That's what's happening. How do I find on YouTube? I think the censor guys are on. They couldn't make it to the studio to hit the censor button. What states are we from? What states are we from? Now, TikTok got that button alive and well. They don't show this thing to nobody. I seen somebody with 20,000 people on their live stream today. I said, there's no way. There's no way. I seen somebody with 1,000. I seen people with uh hundreds. Not here. They say you might get 11. Good luck. New York is in the house. Illinois is in the house. Let me hit that. Let me hit that. We'll see if anybody comes on. Let's see. We're gonna go to. What's up, everybody? What states? What states? Nobody's coming on. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna do state sovereignty. I don't read this enough. Let's read some stuff about the courts. Let's see. We'll do some state sovereignty. We'll do some courts. What else? What else? Let's see. Those are enough to spark enough outrage. Jurisdiction. Ooh, I got a lot on jurisdiction. That's always a fun favorite. That's the one that everybody gets mad at me about. What's the temperature where you're at? What is the temperature where you're at? I think it's 20 where I'm at. I think it's 20. Um, What's the temperature where you're at? What's the temperature where you're at? It's 34. It was 20. It's supposed to be 18 tonight. What's the temperature where you're at? What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? What's up? Um, I was busy today. What do you mean I was busy today? What states are we from, and what's the temperature where you're at? What's the temperature where you're at? It's 13 in New York. There we go. Are you in the five boroughs or are you upstate? Where was I working last year? Elmira. Elmira? That's not how you spell that. Elmira is one word. Elmira, New York. It's 13 degrees right now. Where else was I at? Horsehead, New York. 40 degrees in Mississippi, in South Mississippi. There we go. Are you near Hattiesburg? Or what's the casino town? Biloxi. Illinois, you're near Biloxi. Okay. Is that I-10? I think that's I-10. I-10 will take you all the way to Jacksonville, Florida, all the way to Los Angeles, California. I want to do it one day if I can. 10 degrees, one below, wind chill. Illinois. Brooklyn. Okay, there we go. I met a dude from Chicago. He married. Okay, so he was in the oil field. He was born in Chicago, worked in Chicago, grew up in Chicago, went into the oil field in North Dakota, married a native chick from North Dakota, and then he moved to Montana. And he said it was colder. He said it's colder in Chicago because of all the buildings and the wind than anywhere else. He said it's crazy. So he went to Montana. He works, I'm sure he's still alive, out of Montana. All right, let's see here. Where are we going to start? Let's do state sovereignty. Let's just read some stuff. We'll see where we end up. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this is one of my favorite cases. Okay, so this is Rhode Island versus Massachusetts. They said the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court said, before we can proceed with this court proceeding, we must inquire whether we can hear and determine the matters in controversy between the parties, who are two states of the Union, sovereign within their respective boundaries, except that portion of power which they granted to the federal government. In that case, that would be the Supreme Court. And they said that these two states are foreign to each other, right? So if you live in Mississippi, you are foreign to Alabama and foreign to Louisiana. If you're from Illinois, I don't know what's on the other side of Illinois. I think you're foreign to Iowa and you're foreign to I don't know what's on the other side of Illinois, Ohio, or like Michigan or something like that, right? They said if you're from New York, then uh you're foreign to New Jersey and you're foreign to Pennsylvania, I think, or Connecticut, right? They say you're foreign to each other. They said before we can proceed with this court case, we want to let y'all know that these two states are sovereign and that the except for that portion of power which they granted to the federal government. What did they grant to the federal government? Commerce, admiralty and maritime, and I think as far as the boundaries of the states, I think they do have authority over that. When I mean boundaries, I mean like national parks, certain rivers. I mean, that's really a lot. And certain monuments are under federal control. And so they said these two states are foreign to each other for all but federal purposes. They said those states, in their highest sovereign capacity, in the convention of the people thereof, on whom, by the revolution and the prerogative of the crown of England and the transcendent power of parliament devolved, these states waived exemption from judicial power as sovereigns by original and inherent right, by their own grant of its exercise over themselves. They said, but the reason we're even having this court case, because it would seem weird that two sovereigns would need to come to us for anything. So they said, we want to let you know the only reason they're here today is because they waived their right and consented to be sued and consented to be brought into court. And whatever we decide will affect them because they waived their sovereign immunity because they could not resolve this dispute themselves, or maybe they weren't allowed to resolve the dispute themselves, right? So they said the states waived their exemption from judicial power. They said they can't be brought into courts unless they waive it. They said this court has acquired jurisdiction over the parties in this cause by their own consent. It's very important. So you're exempt from judicial power unless you consent it. And I'm not going to get into that tonight. I read this one all the time. This is New York Supreme Court. They said the people of this state are the successors of the former sovereign. Who's the former sovereign of New York? King George III. Hold on, let me pull up the Constitution. And the Bill of Rights. What do we got on this side? Ooh, and the Magna Carta. All right. So they said the people of this state can exercise all the powers which previous to the revolution could only be exercised by the king alone. Let me see. I think I went over this not too long ago. Boom, there we go again. They said an action is not maintainable against a foreign sovereign. Who is this? I don't know what this is. It's some federal court. They said in the United States Supreme Court that a sovereign is exempt from lawsuits. There can be no legal right against the authority which makes the law on which the right depends. And then they said the United States is not sovereign, but Alabama, or no. Since Florida, Wisconsin, Illinois, North Dakota, those are sovereign. So they said as long as they haven't consented, actions are not maintainable against them. That's a nasty sentence. That's a nasty sentence. My favorite state or my favorite case. They said the states of the union are sovereign states. And it's important that when I read you all these things, if I say it came from the Supreme Court, federal or state, typically federal, okay, well, this is the result of the federal Constitution. So people don't want to, these attorneys and bar members don't want to acknowledge this, but anything after the federal Constitution in on 1787 is fair game. If the Supreme Court said it, the purpose of the Supreme Court is to answer constitutional questions. So they have a question brought before them and they answer it and measure it against, they measure the issue against the Constitution. That's their job. A lower court won't do that. The lower court hasn't been delegated to do that. Technically, the federal Constitution or the state Constitution only creates one court. And then every other court is an inferior court created by the legislator, not created by the Constitution. So technically, no inferior court is constitutional, meaning it doesn't apply to the people of the state or the people in the union. It would only apply to those who are subject or have taken an oath to be bound by the Constitution or was a creation or is subjected to the Constitution. So, for instance, a federal territory is not sovereign. It is under the exclusive legislation of Congress, and Congress can regulate and decide any cases pertaining to that specific territory. What federal court trial did they say you can't sue the sovereign? Well, I got too many. I'm reading all of them that I have. It's too many to just say one. But you can be sued if you've consent. So don't misconstrue what I said. People end up in court every day. Right? People end up in there because through coercion or whatever, they consented. So any sovereign can't be brought into the court that it creates. So no one can. For example, the New York Supreme Court has said it, and the federal courts have said it a million times. So, yeah, I don't even know if I read this case. All right, so this is my favorite case. They say the states of the union are sovereign states. They said this is a strange doctrine as to the states of the union. They said the states between each other are sovereign and independent, and they continue to be nations. Okay, well, New York is a nation. Wisconsin is a nation. Idaho is a nation. California is a nation. Alabama is a nation. Mississippi is a nation. That's why they have flags. That's why they have Supreme Courts. That's why they have a treasury, because they are a nation. They are a group of people specific to that piece of land. So they said they continue to be nations with all the rights of nations in every particular. The rights of each state remain absolute. Let's see. Each state, who is this? California. I read this a lot. California say each state possesses all the powers of an independent and sovereign nation. There you go. I mean, there's no other way to see this stuff, except so far as what has been ceded away by the Constitution. Didn't we read that? Massachusetts versus Rhode Island, whatever that case was. They said, okay, but we want to acknowledge the only reason they're here is because they've given us certain powers to hear this case through. All right. They did give us commerce. They did give us admiralty. They did give us maritime. They did give us a regulation between the states if the issue arises. We do regulate the state governments because they can't go beyond the boundaries of this federal constitution, right? So they say, yes, they did give us certain things, but outside of those distinct things, the states are independent nations. That's what a state means, right? So they said each state possesses all the powers of an independent sovereign nation, except so far as they have been ceded away by the United States Constitution. The federal government, though, is but a creature. It's not a master. It's not a creator. It is but a creature of the people of the states. Oh yeah, we went over these before. Here we go. This is, they said this issue concerning the union of sovereign states is the age-old treaty-making power of independent sovereign nations. They said it is a part of the general right of sovereignty belonging to independent nations to fix and establish, or to establish and fix disputed boundaries between their respective territories. They said this controversy was not between two private parties, but between two sovereignties called Wyoming and Colorado. We talked about this before not too long ago. We talked about Maine. So Maine was admitted into the Union on March 3rd, 1820, or 1820. And they said the people of that part of Massachusetts, now known as Maine, did form themselves into an independent state and did establish a constitution for the government of the same. What did California just say? He said that the states are an independent sovereign nation and that the federal government is but a creature of the people of the states. Okay, well, what do you think the state government is? It is but a creature. It's not sovereign. It can't be sovereign. And so they said established for them as in formed themselves into an independent state and did establish a constitution for the government of the same. And then they said Maine is hereby declared to be one of the United States of America and admitted into the Union on equal footing with the original states in all respects whatsoever. And then the Supreme Court of Maine said, well, Maine, of course, is a sovereign state. They said sovereign immunity means that a state may not be subject to a suit unless it consented to a suit. And Maine regards the immunity from lawsuits one of the highest attributes in the inherent nature of sovereignty. They say this is the explicit authority in the Maine Constitution. I like Maine. I don't, for real. Maine is probably the coldest place ever. It's got to be. I went to Boston one time, and that I've never felt more cold in my life because it's right there on the water, and Maine's right there. Like it's right up there. It's from the water. You can get on a boat and go from Boston to Maine, and there's no way Maine's not. I mean, it's dang near Canada. All right, this one I love getting in trouble with this one. All right, Florida joined the Union on March 3rd, 1845, and the people of Florida formed for themselves a constitution and state government, both of which of the said constitutions and state government are Republican. And they are now on equal footing with the original states. They said that Florida is declared to be one of the states of the United States of America and hereby admitted into the Union on equal footing with the original states. Now, the Supreme Court of Florida said the states of the Union still possessing attributes of sovereignty shall be immune from suits without their consent. All these states say it. What we done heard California, Maine said it. So this is very clear. This is not up for debate, right? All throughout American history, we see the states are sovereign. There was something I was reading. I think Florida has it. All the legitimate laws of the states are to be placed in the Secretary of State. So if it's truly lawful, it will be on record with the Secretary of State. If it's not on record with the Secretary of State of the state, it's not valid law. But Florida Supreme Court said that states of the Union still possessing attributes of sovereignty shall be immune from lawsuits without their consent. They said Florida is immune to suits. Congress, federal government, has no authority to subject a state to the jurisdiction of a federal court. Remember, we just read the case where I forgot the case. I forgot the states, but it was like Massachusetts and Rhode Island. They said that, okay, well, the reason they're in court today is because they waived. They said, we want to, hey, before y'all come at us, Massachusetts and Rhode Island are sovereign. And they are exempt from lawsuits. And the only reason they're before us in the Supreme Court today is because they waived their right to be immune from lawsuits. And as a result, we have the power to hear and determine this case. We got jurisdiction because they consented, right? So Florida said, yep, that same thing happened to us. Florida is immune to lawsuits, and Congress has no authority to subject a state to the jurisdiction of a federal court. What they said, they don't write laws for Florida. They don't write laws for New York. You won't find it. Remember, it's very few things that they can write in the federal government. And you won't see them telling Florida that they can and can't do something. That would be which they do it every day, but that would be a usurpation of Florida sovereignty, because Florida has a legislator, right? Florida has a executive branch. Florida has a judicial branch. So it would be I don't want to get in trouble, but it would be idiotic to say that, well, the feds could just write things and make a state do something. No. You can request, you can ask, which what they really do is bribe. They give them free Federal Reserve notes and then they gladly accept it. But you can't ever say that, oh, well, we told y'all to do something and you didn't do it. You can't say that. You can never say that, because it says it right here. Florida is immune to lawsuits and Congress has no authority. How much? How much authority do they have to subject a state to the jurisdiction of a federal court? None. They have no authority. That's a crazy statement. In a world where they believe Donald Trump is in charge of everything, that's a nasty statement. So they said in another case, well, Florida has retained the status of a sovereign. Why? Because Florida was once a territory, but now it has been admitted into the Union on equal footing with the original states. Well, what were the original states? They were sovereign and independent. There was no such thing as a federal government when the original 13 states joined and called themselves the United States of America. They said there was no such thing. So when Florida eventually comes into the Union, the same way Vermont, the same way Tennessee, the same way Kentucky comes into the Union, okay, well, they're all on equal footing with this thing called the original states. Why? Because the original states were not and are not subject. Congress has no authority to subject the original 13 states to the jurisdiction of a federal court. Does that make sense? So they say, okay, well, because Florida was admitted into the Union on equal footing with the original states, And the original states, the original 13 states are considered sovereign and independent. Always have, always, I can't say always will be, but so in other cases, the Supreme Court of Florida says, okay, well, we should keep in mind that this thing called sovereignty is in the people. Uh-oh, there's a shift because we just got through talking about state governments and how they don't have to end up in court because they didn't consent. Okay, well, this thing called sovereign immunity applies to in whom the sovereignty resides and to whom the sovereignty is vested in. So the Supreme Court of Florida said, oh, what? Let's not forget, the sovereignty is in the people. They say it again in another case. Okay, this thing called sovereignty is in the people. Right? Okay, they got this other case where they say this thing called the Bill of Rights became a part of the federal Constitution on December 15th, 1791. But it had already been fundamental law of Virginia on June 12th, 1776, embedded in other state or colonial constitutions. They said this thing called the Bill of Rights has grassroots in the Magna Carta, which was published on June 15th, 1215. And they said its declared purpose was to guarantee the personal and political liberty of Englishmen. And that as a result, they now have this doctrine, which comes from the Magna Carta and the English liberties, called the divine right of kings, which is that sovereignty resides in the people. And they say this is attached to all state constitutions. And Florida said, okay, well, we heartily reiterate the view that sovereignty resides in the people. See, this is what I find hilarious. I'm looking, I'm not paying attention. I only see what gets shown to me. I don't go searching for this stuff. But whatever's going on in Minnesota right now could be done. It shouldn't be no issue because the people of Minnesota should know their rights. I think it's in Minnesota, I think. See, whenever someone gets authority from the Constitution and has badges and handcuffs, and then they violate the Constitution, okay, well, they're supposed to answer to the people of the state in that territory. See, this is a classic ignorance of the Bill of Rights because that's what the Second Amendment is for. Right there, boom. This should not be this should not be an issue. If you're in Florida, go to the Florida, just search Florida sovereignty on the Patreon. You'll see yellow highlight on when Florida joined the union, and then there's a bunch of cases under that. I think you commented on it. Somebody did. So just search Florida sovereignty on the Patreon or go to the Florida. It should be maybe the oldest thing on there. Okay, so this thing going on in Minnesota or wherever it's going on, this thing should not be an issue because they got a Bill of Rights and they got a constitution on how to handle things like this, right? So they got this thing called, obviously, whatever their amendment is in Minnesota. It may not be called the Second Amendment, whatever, right? But they definitely got this thing called a grand jury. And the sheriff is supposed to go pick up whoever caused those incidents. And they're supposed to answer to the grand jury. Because the grand jury is not an extension of the corporate fiction called the state of Minnesota. That's where you literally answer to the people, and not even the Supreme Court of Minnesota can tell the grand jury what it can and can't do. Like, this is crazy stuff. But they want you to believe that, well, you vote and that's how you get things. No, that ain't That ain't in there. That's not how you're supposed to get things done. Somebody's supposed to go to prison over this stuff, right? And so whatever's going on in Minnesota should have been answered by the people. They should have all went to the whatever county that stuff happened in, the county grand juror's office, and say, yep, these are the two agents' names, and boom, go send the sheriff to go pick them up. And it should have been 40 deputies showed up, put somebody in handcuffs, bring them right before the people. And then they get the report. They, first of all, you're supposed to grill them on due process. First thing off the bat, who told you you could operate in Minnesota? Did you get permission from the sheriff? Did you have permission from a judge to go after anybody specific? No. So you're just harassing the people of Minnesota, right? Okay. And then you fired on some people. You fired on the people of Minnesota. So you don't have authorization to be in this state, because they don't tell you this, but they have to have permission from the county. Why? Because that thing called the sheriff is the chief executive officer of a county. The county is the large, and technically, to the Constitution, there's no such thing as a city. There's no such thing as a city. There's only counties and their states. That's it. Right? So when the grand jury's grilling, they should be saying, okay, well, how did you get from, hypothetically, they have an office in Minnesota, right? All right, well, how did you get from your office to, who told you you could do that? And you had no warrants, and there was no breach of the peace. You caused the breach of the peace. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, we're going to form some indictments on this because you're not allowed. Oh, and they were unarmed. Okay, yeah, no, you can't do that here, buddy. You'll be answering to the petite jury now. And we'd have created a case and sent it to the trial by jury. And then they got to answer and try to explain to the people of Minnesota how they had no authorization of law. They had no permission from the sheriff. They had no permission or warrant from a signed county judge as to how they were supposedly operating from the District of Columbia to this sovereign nation called Minnesota. Minnesota, right? And they're supposed to answer to the grand jury. Like, it ain't supposed to be no protests. Yeah, we got another form of protest. It ain't supposed to be no protest right now. We got something different we got for that. Yeah, we ain't holding up no signs. You know what I mean? Like, that's the common law. And me too, we've been so desensitized because we want, in the name of progression, to remove the lawful heritage. And then when they violate the Constitution, disregard the people's rights, now you want to protest. No. And then you get mad when it should have never got to this point. They should have been afraid to be in Minnesota. They should have said, hold on, boys, got to tread carefully. Them boys in Minnesota send the sheriff, and they will get this thing called a posse comitatus after us. See, that's the issue. They're not afraid. Right? So this thing called sovereignty is significant. It comes with real responsibility, and you can't vote it. You can't vote to have it, and you can't make a foreign corporation do what you're responsible to do. They said we should keep in mind that sovereignty is in the people. And then you look at this thing called the grand jury, and they say, well, we can't actually tell the grand jury what to do. They can summon anybody. The sheriff can go in and get anybody on their behalf, and they got to answer to the people on how two people are now no longer with the people of Minnesota because of the actions of unauthorized federal agents. That's the law. But people don't want to hear that. People want to call you a sovereign citizen. You start talking about this stuff. No, this is real life. Two people lost their life. This is not play. This is the same thing they talked about in the Declaration of Independence. What they say? They said they sent swarms of troops what they say, erected multitudes of new officers and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out our substance. This is textbook. Thomas Jefferson said, "Okay, get to it. What's going on here?" He said he has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. Did you get consent to be from the District of Columbia in Minnesota? No, you didn't. Because you didn't go through what the people have established. The county sheriff. Who puts the county sheriff in office? The people. He's elected. And if he don't want to do his job, okay, we'll get rid of him too. Right? That's the law. Like that's you don't call the police. Never mind. I gotta stop. I gotta stop. So they say the states of the union still possessing attributes of sovereignty are immune from lawsuits without their consent. Florida is immune to lawsuits. Congress has no authority to subject Florida to the jurisdiction of a federal court. They said Florida has retained the status of a sovereign. Why? Because Florida was admitted into the union on equal footing with the original states in all respects whatsoever. It was something else I was going to say. Talking about Florida. They're talking about the Bill of Rights, Constitution, yada, yada, yada. The purpose of the Bill of Rights is so that the people have the divine rights of kings, and that is the sovereignty that is residing in the people. They said this is in all state constitutions. Okay. I went to college and high school in Florida. All right. During hurricane season, okay, well, some areas, if you live on the coast, okay, well, they got Coast Guard bases and stuff like that. All right. And so if a disaster comes through, the federal Coast Guard has to have permission from the governor to go to have rescue missions. I talked about this before, to have rescue missions in Florida. Why? Because the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction just to be doing stuff in Florida. They are restricted to federal land. They are restricted to the Coast Guard base or to the thing that they've been tasked to operate on, which is the 3-mile water mile up into international waters. Then the Navy comes in, right? So their job is their military base, and I think it's like 3 nautical miles up into the international watermark, whatever that is, right? Okay, well, that's it. That's all they got power to do. That you look up the word special agent or special agency. They say they got two statutes on what they can do. The end. They cannot do another agency's job, and they can't do more than they've been authorized to do. Right? So you have to have the Coast Guard, for example, you have to have permission. They don't tell you this, but when I was in Florida during these hurricanes, they would say, okay, well, they'd get on the news and say, yeah, the Coast Guard requested permission to help during this disastrous time. Okay, why? Because they don't magically have permission to just be in Florida. Right now, I'm sure they break the law just like everybody else breaking the law, but I'm just saying they legislatively, we've never you won't find the United States Coast Guard in the Florida Constitution. You understand that? Like, this is very serious, right? So if the Coast Guard has to have permission, then what other has to have permission and don't be getting it? And now 2 people are no longer here because of the unconstitutional actions, which whatever they want to say is not granted immunity, not when you're before the grand jury. You may get immunity from commercial courts, but you got to stand before the common law court, that grand jury and that trial by jury. That's the thing they don't want to talk about. That's the thing they ignore, just like they don't talk about gold and silver, right? So they said this thing is serious. We heartily reiterate the view that the sovereignty is in the people. Under our form of constitutional government, what form of Florida constitutional government, sovereignty is in the people. Does that make sense? A little bit? Say, no, I don't get it. All right, let me read you this. This is the Supreme Court of Virginia. Now the only reason I'm talking about this case, I found this case today. They redacted this case on the internet. So, for those who care, I use Court Listener to find cases that already exist that I've, whatever books I'm in, I'm finding cases. And I use Court Listener because they allow you to download the PDF sometimes if they have the PDF, because what they do is they'll scan these case books and that's how they create their website. Okay, well, this case that I found, all right, well, you go to the PDF and the whole thing has got black bars over it. You can't read what it says. It's all been redacted. It's all got big black bars. You can't read what it says because they don't want you to read what it says. Well, I found the case. All right, because I don't like being lied to. All right, so this is a Supreme Court case from the Virginia Supreme Court case. All right, now the thing that's not on their website that I found the actual case reporter book says that, let me read it right. All right, so at the beginning of the case, this is the thing that's redacted. They'll have a bunch of conclusions or summaries about what has transpired in the actual portion of the case. So they got like about 15 summaries in this case, and on the website, it's all blacked out. They don't want you to see it, but I'm going to read it. All right, so they say this thing called state, a sovereign entity, power of the state. They said the state, known as Virginia, is a sovereign entity, and the people collectively in their sovereign capacity are the state. Who's the state? Who is Minnesota State? The people. Who is Virginia State? The people. Who is Florida State? The people. They said this about Virginia. They said this the part don't let them see this. They said state, sovereign entity, the power of the state. The state is a sovereign entity, and the people collectively in their sovereign capacity are the state. See, they want you to think a state is a corporation, just like they want you to think federally, the United States is a corporation. But the state called Virginia is a people. That's why they said, I read earlier, the states are nations. Okay, well, what's a nation? We hear about Native American tribes, and they're the Cherokee Nation and the whatever nation. I don't know no other tribes, but okay, well, that's a people group. That's what a nation means. So whatever the Cherokee people are, they are a nation. Okay, but more than they're a nation, they are a people. Okay, well, what's the definition of a state? The real one. It's the people. They said the state as a sovereign entity is the people collectively in their sovereign capacity. And that they are the state. The people are the state. Okay. They said when it and the other 13 original states acquired their independence, each acquired not only powers and prerogatives and rights of the British Crown. Didn't we just read that in New York? Okay. But also the powers and rights held by the people collectively. What's that? The grand jury, the trial by jury. That's technically, I don't want to get in too much trouble, but that's technically what the militia is. You look at the militia in the Bill of Rights, the Federal Bill of Rights, that is defined by all the Supreme Courts as the people. That's a classification. So who's responsible for Minnesota? The same answer, the people. Right? So they said when the 13 original states acquired their independence, not only powers and prerogatives of the British Crown, but all the powers held by the people collectively in their capacity as sovereign. They said Virginia acquired its independence. They say it like no other state did it. Or they said, we're not talking about any other state. We're talking about Virginia. They said Virginia acquired its independence. We don't know about everybody else. I'm being silly. But they said it acquired full and complete sovereignty. They said this after the Constitution, y'all. They said they have full and complete dominion over all the lands and waters within its territorial limits, right? So I'm gonna keep referring back to Minnesota. Okay, so who did these federal employees get permission from to operate within somebody else's full and complete dominion over all the lands and waters within its territorial limits? Do you understand that? They said Virginia is a sovereignty. Who told you could be here? Who gave you permission? All right, they said right, they just showed up. All right, constitutional law. This is talking about Virginia. Look. They said this thing called constitutional law, the construction of the Virginia Constitution with reference to pre-existing laws and rights. There is nothing primitive about a state constitution. They said this is nasty now. This is the real deal. They said it is based upon pre-existing laws. What pre-existing laws? The common law of England. They said it is based upon pre-existing laws, rights, habits, and modes of thought of the people who ordained it. And the fundamental theory of sovereignty and of government. That's why they got all of this. I'm telling y'all, if you're on the Patreon, I just posted it not too long ago. It got black bars over all this stuff I'm reading. They said, no, don't tell them this. Don't tell them this. Don't tell them this. They said this thing is the modes and thoughts of the people who ordained it, and the fundamental theory of sovereignty and government, which has been developed under the common law and must be construed in light of this fact. There you go. And then they say again, this is another part of Virginia constitutional law. They said construction of the Constitution, purposes for which it was ordained. They said this thing called the Virginia Constitution must be construed in light of the purposes for which it was ordained. What they say in the previous one, they said the theory of sovereignty and government, which has been developed under the common law. What did Florida called it? Florida called it sovereign immunity. Maine called it sovereign immunity. They said we can't be brought into other people's courts or courts we created without our consent. Why? Because the purpose of government is the protection to secure rights. We didn't give you permission to take them away. They said if rights and property are to be taken away, you have to go before the people, called a trial by jury. They said we never told you to prescribe punishment before the issue has gotten to the people, who are the lawful judges of Virginia. They say it again, this thing called state. Sovereignty. The legislator cannot relinquish, alienate, or impair the sovereignty of the state. They said it would be a perversion of the Constitution. They do it every day. To construe it as authorizing or permitting the legislator or any other governmental agency to relinquish, alienate, or destroy or substantially impair the sovereignty or the sovereign rights or governmental powers of the state. Who did they say the sovereignty was? Oh yeah, they said the people collectively in their sovereign capacity are the state. This is the same case, y'all. They said the sovereign powers of the state must be exercised subject to such limitations upon the exercise thereof by the legislator as are provided in the Constitution. Okay, well, the Virginia Constitution, the federal Constitution, whatever state you're in, cannot be interpreted, cannot be explained without reference to the common law of England. Virginia would know. They were the first ones here. Yeah, so they redacted all that. All that. They said, no, don't tell them the sovereignty is in the people, and that you can't write anything that take away people's right. That's a nasty case, boys. They say it again. They say it in the actual body of the case. They say the sovereign or the people in their sovereign capacity. They said the people are the state. They said when I'm reading it again, when the original 13 states or the 13 original states acquired their independence, each acquired the powers, prerogatives, and rights of the British Crown, but also all the powers and rights held by the people collectively in their capacity as sovereign. That's a nasty case. So what's the purpose of a trial by jury? That's how you exercise. Did you put that part on the Patreon? Yeah, it's on the page. It's the last thing I posted before I went online. I posted that 2 hours ago. I got all this due process stuff I'm learning. I'm getting that from that book I got on the Patreon called Due Process. It's called Life, Liberty, Property, Due Process of Law. That book, I looked it up again. It's $500. And you can get it if you're on the Patreon for $5. Yeah, go to PDF. Go to Library Part 2. Oh, here they go. The censor boys are back. Yeah. Yeah, I say download it now. That book is nasty. I ain't gonna lie, that dude's racist as crap. That dude who wrote that book, it's hilarious. These people, because I'll be honest, half the stuff I learn is from old racist white dudes. Like, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, you find all this stuff and they're talking about, oh, well, it's for the white people only. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense, because you claim all these things come from the Bible. Well, there was nobody white in the Bible. So what do you mean it's only for white people? Right? They say, oh, well, all these constitutional rights are only for white people. I'm like, that's not true, but that's okay. Thanks for the book anyway. It's like William Blackstone. William Blackstone's got 4 books called The Commentaries on the Laws of England. He wrote them in 1765, and right before the Revolution really cranked off, everybody bought that book. And then the first book, he's got 4 books. In the first book, he says that the colonies and other territories of Great Britain are not entitled to the common law of England. And they say, yeah. Well, anyways, we'll take 50 copies of those. They say Americans and the colonists bought that book more than people in England bought that book. They say, you don't get to tell us what we can and can't have. Thank you. And then they got other cases. What's that case? It's Dred Scott versus Sanford or something like that. They say, well, it was 5 states that judge knew of that already had free black people at the time of the Articles of Confederation. So it's like, okay, well, y'all racist and y'all lying about who gets rights and who don't get rights. So I just find all that stuff hilarious. But yeah, that book is on, if you're on Patreon, Library Part 2. Download it. Don't nobody got that book but you. Don't nobody got that book digitized but you. All right. I forgot what I was talking about. But that was good. That was good. I'm going to clip it, put it on YouTube. Clip it, put it on YouTube. Let's see here. Now, I want to read some stuff about the courts. Let's see. We'll find some good stuff here. I got a lot. Half the stuff is probably in the book. I got this thing on New Jersey. New Jersey. Let me see. New Jersey. New Jersey has a website, like their government has a website that they pretty much tell the whole story. Yeah, this is it. I was already there. All right. New Jersey said, in order for you to perform what they call a service of process or a service of summons, you must, they're talking about attorneys and service processors, deputies, and stuff like that. They say if they don't have the address, they can't move forward with the case. That's a nasty sentence, boys. That's a nasty sentence. It's on the New York or New Jersey government website. They said, "Oh yeah, we can't prosecute a case without an address." Why? Because that's technically federal territory. They say a case cannot move forward unless the defendant receives the complaint and summons from the court. So if the court doesn't have the address, your case cannot move forward. Well, where would the courts get an address from? State ID. That car y'all driving. Yep. All right. Let's see here. What else? Let's see. Any questions? Oh yeah, I forgot I had this case. No, I didn't. I did not forget at all. You had stopped off with trial by jury is how what? Oh yeah. The Supreme Court said that the jurisdiction of the admiralty courts are our greatest grievance. They said the courts of admiralty seem to be forming to overturn our Constitution and to deprive us of our best inheritance, the laws of the land. They said it would be thought in England a dangerous thing if a trial of any matter on land was given to the admiralty. They do it every day. Oh, I learned a new word. I can't remember what it is now. I'll be trying to see what's an admiralty phrase. Is it better to have a jury trial or a trial by jury? What is the difference? That's a difficult conversation. There's supposed to be no difference. And I'm not going to lie to you. You're going to have to fight. There's due process violations everywhere. You're not getting what we think is a common law trial by jury, right? So if you don't watch the live often, I come on here often and say, well, who are the judges of the state? We'll take Maryland, for example. Okay, well, Maryland says that the trial of all issues, or let me just go to it. Maryland says, well, the Maryland Constitution says it actually, that they are the judges of, let me see if I got it right there. If not, we'll just Google it. No, let me Google it. Yeah, the Maryland Constitution, I think Illinois Constitution, and the Indiana Constitution say that the jury are the judges of the law. Maryland Constitution. Boom, 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 boom. Declaration of Rights. Judges. Yeah, Article 23 of the federal or Maryland Constitution. The trial of all criminal cases, the jury shall be the judges of the law. Okay, so we're not it as of today, 2026, we're not getting a common law trial by jury. That's the issue. So I can't say it doesn't matter, but it in reality it doesn't matter. The argument I'm trying to make is, well, we have to learn to exit the system. There's no we it's only so much I can say, but we don't have states anymore. We don't have state governments anymore, right? The 10th Amendment says whatever hasn't been given to the people or to the feds or to the states is now left up to the people. That's it, right? So Maryland says that, in Indiana and Illinois say, and other states say it, the jury shall be the judges of the law, that they determine the law. People talk about it all the time. This nullification. You have the power. Thomas Jefferson told Kentucky, well, it doesn't matter whatever the issue is that you guys deem unconstitutional, because you are the final authority on the law. Whatever it went, once that case gets to you, then that jury is the final say so on the issue, right? So there is no more, well, a jury trial versus a trial by jury. That's a fake lingo that either an attorney or a Fed made, right? So in a civil case, you are essentially bound by, or supposed to be. So I can't just say, because I don't know what happens in individual instances, but that jury is bound by the courts in a civil case. So you can do your best to inform them of their rights, but in a civil case, they sometimes they don't even give you 12 people in a civil case. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So the only time you can fight for a 12 is in a criminal case, right? So there is no difference between what they call a jury trial and a trial by jury, because we're not getting trial by juries. That's the issue I'm trying to raise, is that we're not even getting what they are giving us. And they're calling it whatever, but it shouldn't have mattered what they called it, because we're not getting it no way. They inform the jury that you have to believe the law as the judge, the guy in the black robe, determines the law. Okay, well, in this Maryland Constitution, he hasn't been given permission to determine the law. Who are the judges of the law in Maryland? The jury, the people. All right, so they're not getting that. Why? Because the people of Maryland don't know that, right? The people of Minnesota don't know that they can assemble a grand jury, or whoever's on the grand jury right now can just go get the sheriff and tell them to go pick up 2 ICE agents, and now they got to answer to us. They ain't never did that in our lifetime. I don't know how long Minnesota's been there, but they ain't never did that, right? And they not finna do it. So, yeah, whatever we think we're getting, we're not. Yeah, a lot of this is vain. Because I got 30,000 people on TikTok and they show it to 9, right? But they'll let some scammer or whoever, they get hundreds of people, right? Yeah. Well, it all depends on the context. I think it can be done. We have to be unified, though. We got to come together. That's the real issue. We got to come together. We need one county. Just need one county. We put the county on display. Get in a little trouble, but we have to inform a county. A county don't know that they're the judges of the law. You know how crazy that sounds? They ain't never been told that. Why? They watch Law and Order, and the guy in the black robe is the guy in charge. No, 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 no. They don't show them instructing the jury that they're the judges of the law. You know how crazy that it would be? They don't, before, when you listen to the radio on the way to work, they don't say, oh, by the way, the people of Virginia are sovereign. What was it? Mississippi's got a crazy case. They say, oh, yeah, by the way, you guys are sovereign, and like anything you want to do, you can do. Something like that. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Supreme Court of Mississippi said all the sovereign power is vested in the people of Mississippi, and the people of Mississippi have the power by virtue of such sovereignty to do whatever, whenever they please. They ain't never told people in Mississippi that. You know how crazy that is? They said in this same case that if you pardon somebody from prison or jail or whatever, or from the penalties of the case, okay, well, then that is an act of the sovereign's mercy and grace. What? What are you talking about? See, see, they don't know we read. They don't know people like me read cases. See, they'll post all this stuff in a case. See, people don't know how the Supreme Court works. They don't have people in front of them in a Supreme Court case. They just send writs of error most of the time. There's very few instances where there's a case and people make it up to. They have to file paperwork up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will write that. And the only people who get notified of it is the parties, and then they'll publish that in a book, and then only the attorneys will know this stuff. So, yes, that case is in Mississippi. If you're on the Patreon, it's on the sovereignty of Mississippi. Right? So they don't know. I mean, which I'm nobody, but don't nobody read these cases. I spent half the day reading cases. Like I'm on that due process book. Okay, well, that due process book got all the cases in it, and I spent all day reading them cases. If you live in Mississippi. Oh, you're saying about your case. Oh, okay, I see. So yeah, I mean this is an information issue, right? So people don't. We just got to come together. There's no other way to say it. There's people got to come together. Because if you had one county who were truly informed of their power, like we could put money together and pay for a billboard, and every week we could have a state Supreme Court case that say, "Hey, the people, yada yada yada, whatever, are the judges of the law." I'll pay for a billboard in Mississippi that say, "Okay, well, the people are the judges of the law. If they pardon somebody, that is an act of the sovereign's mercy." You know how crazy that would be? People will cause accidents in traffic. They'll take that billboard down the next day. That'll be so nasty. Right? But that's the issue. The issue is it's got to move from this live stream thing. That don't get nothing done. Don't nobody believe me. Very few people have been not able to have a case created on them because they don't have a car and don't have a state ID. Most people have a state ID. So it'd be crazy for them to hear a random guy on the internet say, well, because the people are sovereign, as long as you haven't consented to lawsuits, well, you can't even be brought into court. Like people not gonna hear that. You know how crazy that is? Yeah, right. Well, how come it's not on YouTube? How come it's not on TikTok? Because you don't know the law. Like, how come you didn't read the Mississippi Constitution, right? That, as an example, right? And then the attorneys, they right there, they ready to type something. No, it's not correct. Da, 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 da. So until a people come together and do it, which you know what I mean, that this is I'm doing my part as best as I can, but at some point I must have to start holding barbecues and saying, hey, I'm gonna have to pay for the best caterer in town, and and I need 200 people who want the best caterer in town to listen to me talk for 45 minutes. You know what I mean? So that's how much for a one-on-one? $0. I won't be doing it. I can't help people on their case. I just can't do that. First of all, it's incredibly time consuming. I cannot help people on the case. First of all, I'm not an attorney. If you want information, you can get on the Patreon and copy all this information off. I tell people take one day a week, try to copy and paste all this stuff into a Google document, get a flash drive, download every book. Because it's not enough hours in that's how I don't believe these scammers. Because it takes me all day reading. And these people just be yapping all day, scamming people, lying. I'm like, there's no way you guys are actually telling anything worth value. The greatest law professor got to read all day. You know what I mean? The greatest law professor still got to be quiet and read. So ain't no way he ain't live streaming. He know more than everybody, right? Even the judge got to reread the books. So ain't no way you on here all day and telling the truth. So see, there you go. Get them law dictionaries. That's the most important thing. Get them law dictionaries. I got a new one on there from a British law dictionary. That thing be explaining everything. They got a definition of merchant. Okay, this is what the definition of merchant means. The definition of merchant means they said, well, not everybody who buys and sells is participating in commerce. They said to be a merchant means you participate in commerce by way of importation and exportation. I said, oh, them American law dictionaries don't say it like that. They speak with a presumption. But that British law dictionary, which was in the mid 1700s, say, well, not everybody is in commerce. Not everybody's in participating in merchants or participating with the law merchant. They said, well, only if you're participating in importation and exportation would you be in commerce. So if it didn't come off a ship and then end up to where you were at, or you didn't send something from where you were at to a ship, that's not commerce. So I make this analogy all the time. Well, if you were born in Arkansas and you grew food in Arkansas and you sold those crops to people in Arkansas, well, that's not commerce. Why? Commerce would be if you sent it to Tennessee, or you sent it to Oklahoma, or you sent it to Louisiana, or you sent it to Texas. That may be commerce. I'll give them that. But if you produced it in the state and you exchanged it in the state, that to the law dictionary, that's not commerce, right? So they said a merchant was just somebody who imports and exports by way of ships. Okay. So not everything is commerce, right? That you hear these scammers talking about, well, all crimes are commercial because they cite in the United States Code, which is not law. Well, at common law, almost no crimes were commercial. So that's how I know people be lying and people out here scamming. Right? They say, oh, all crimes are commercial. Well, those aren't crimes, because crime, according to the law of the state, requires an injured party. And you can't use the commercial avenues or the corporate avenues of the state government to deal with an actual injured party. You have to go to either the grand jury or they answer to the trial by jury, which are not commercial or corporate entities of the state. They said, the United States Supreme Court said, well, the grand jury is not a part of the court system. But they said it's a constitutional fixture in its own right. Right? So how important is all this stuff? I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, that law dictionary. Merchant. Sheriff. What's a sheriff? I just got this one from that dictionary. I've been learning a lot about this sheriff thing. Let's see. What's a sheriff? A sheriff. Now, this is a British dictionary. So they're talking about in England. And this is really at the time of the Revolution. What they said, I don't know when the Stamp Act was. When was the Stamp Act? $1765. Yeah, that's the same time. Okay. So when they talk about this thing called the sheriff, okay, well, that nothing changed as of that date of that dictionary. They said the government of the county at this time, all right, so this thing called the sheriff is anciently the government of the county was lodged in this thing called an earl or a count. But they said when this job became too burdensome, it was necessary to constitute a person duly qualified to officiate in his room instead. They said from hence he is called the sheriff or shire reeve, or the governor of the shire and of the count or of the county. He is likewise the bailiff to the crown. His county of which he has care, his job is to execute the king's writs, uh, called a bailiwick or bailiwick. I don't have no idea. But I block people all the time. If you probably was wilding in the comment section or something like that, or I don't know. I blocked so many people. I'm sorry. I really can't give you a logical answer. I don't know. I blocked so many people. It's just if you were wilding in the comment section, it's I don't know then. All right. So what is a sheriff? A sheriff is dang it, they said it. The governor of the shire or the county. That's what a sheriff is. And his job is to execute the government's writs. So they used to call the county a bailiwick or a bailiwick or whatever, bailiwick. So yeah, and they got that's just a little paragraph. They got a whole story about the responsibility and roles of the sheriff and all that stuff. So everything we thought we knew, okay, well they're not telling us the entire story, right? So in another part of that definition, it was saying like uh I forgot, but it was like to answer to the people. Well, now he answers to the people because he's elected by the people. But people say, "Oh, well, the common law sheriff." Well, that guy wasn't of the common law. That dude was of the corporate fiction, right? So the common law is the ancient unwritten law. That's before William the Conqueror, and they had two types of courts at common law. They had the court of the king's bench, and they had the court of common pleas. Okay. Now he was responsible for keeping the peace in that shire or that county. Oh, I tell you, right now on YouTube is Robin Hood, Russell Crowe, Robin Hood. That is a great picture. They got the sheriff on there. They also have King John Lackland on there. Okay, so I've told this story before. Okay, so the time of the Magna Carta, this movie helps. It's not accurate, but it paints a great picture of what life was like surrounding the time of the Magna Carta. Okay, so at the time of the Magna Carta, they forced King John to sign the Magna Carta because you watch this movie called Robin Hood, you'll see exactly why they did what they did, because he's going from county to county, and the sheriff is responsible for collecting the tax of that day. So there was no such thing as a common law sheriff. That dude was not of the common law. That dude was a corporate entity, right? So, um, so the sheriff in England is responsible for collecting the tax. So in this movie, go watch this movie. It's free on YouTube. Russell Crowe's Robin Hood. Um, Creators are going to steal this info. Probably they steal it anyway. I see people trying to reuse my sound and whatever. They steal it anyway. Uh, and so this sheriff, he's not doing his job at all. He's not protecting the county. He's sleeping with all type of women and stuff like that. But they're enforcing fake taxes on behalf of the French in this movie. This is what's going on in the movie. All right. So in the movie, this is Russell Crowe. King Richard is John Lackland's dad. John Lackland is the king who was forced to sign the Magna Carta. Okay. In the movie, this guy is a kid. He's like probably in his 20s. And he's in friendship with the French, and he's being secretly told what to do from the Pope. And so he's going around to all the King of England is going around to these different counties and shires and collecting a tax. But the people had already gave everything. They didn't have nothing else. And yet he's still going around to these different counties trying to collect the tax. So it gets up until a culmination of the movie which they don't do it right because they don't want to tell the real history. But in the real story of the Magna Carta, well, they bring an army to King John, and King John has an army with him. And they say, you're going to sign this Magna Carta right now, and you're going to enforce it because even the king is bound by laws, right? Like, you don't get to protect us and then just rob us of everything. And so they forced him to sign it, or they were going to go to war right there. And he signed it, but that ain't how they got it in the movie. But you watch that movie, and you're gonna see like, oh, this makes sense. Yeah, I see why they would have. You read a Magna Carta, like, oh, okay, they you see all the time. You see the sheriff ain't doing his job. The people don't have no money. They keep getting taxed. All their liberties, all their due process not being given to them. And then that's the backdrop of the story to this Robin Hood character in the movie. So you should watch it. It's very good, very explained. When the guy says, I'm the sheriff, I'm like, well, you ain't been doing your job the whole movie. What are you talking about? Where you been at? He got 3-4 girls in the house. I'm like, he wilding. But yeah. What else? So yeah, that was the sheriff. Oh, the common law. Let me see if I can pull that up. They go over the common law. See, when you get it from a British dictionary, it's different. It ain't wrong, but it's just different. They explain it a different way than these American law dictionaries. What year is that? Yeah, so you go over to common law. Let's see what they got for the common law. They got paragraphs. They say this is the Anglos and the Saxons and the. I said, oh, this dictionary is nice. They don't tell us this. Let's see. All right, what's this? Common, chameleon. Common. There we go. Common. What's that? Committee. Common. Where's the common law? See, they got paragraphs. Oh, that was the common law. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. They said the German people invaded the Britons. These German people were the Saxons and the Angles, who were the neighboring people of the Jutes. And I can't read all of it. It's Old English. Does each state have a dictionary with the laws? I don't think so. What state are you in? Mississippi. Now they have encyclopedias, not each state, but a lot of states. Let me see. Encyclopedias are the best you're going to get as far as trying to find specific subjects. So Mississippi, I believe, has a state encyclopedia. Yep, the Encyclopedia of Mississippi Law. That's the name of it. So it'll be a volume of books. It'll be volume 1 will be the letter A, and then it'll go down until, whatever. So you could find out more than I could find out because I don't live in Mississippi. But you go there, you look up constitutional law, they're going to tell you all about this thing called the common law of England, and that you can't interpret the Mississippi Constitution without the common law of England. Then you can go look up jury trials and trial by juries and all that criminal law. They're going to have a specific subject on all of those things, and under them will be Mississippi Supreme Court cases. Typically, I ain't seen it, but that's typically how those encyclopedias work. So the Encyclopedia of Mississippi Law, there's typically volumes. So volume 1 will be the letter A, until whatever. And then you just go down. And then you need to find the word or the name Mississippi or the state Mississippi. They'll tell you all about it, how it came to be, all type of stuff. Yeah, they got a whole thing about the common law. Ooh, there we go. See, I ain't even pay attention to this. They got this guy named Thomas Wood. See, these old dictionaries will tell you a book, and you'll try to find that book. Let me see if I can find it. That's the good thing about these dictionaries, because the dictionary tells you where they get their stuff too. There we go. Ooh, buddy. Just found a new book. We are no longer common law, are we? You live in Mississippi? What's the law of Mississippi, everybody? What is the law of Mississippi? The common law of England brought over by the colonists as part of their heritage is the law of Mississippi. What's the law of Mississippi? The territorial government of Mississippi was established by an act passed in 1798. In 1817, the United States Congress authorized Mississippi into the Union. They said when the Mississippi Territory was organized, the ordinance secured the inhabitants in the enjoyment of judicial proceedings according to the course of common law. The right to a trial by jury based on the 1890 Mississippi Constitution is the common law of this state. The common law is not, never has been, and never will be static or stagnant. So what's the law of Mississippi? They said that in 2016. Oh, found a new book, everybody. I found a new book. I can't read it. It's too old. Like some of the stuff I can't read any of it. I don't know any of those words. Like the S's are different, the F's are different. Like it's a lot of information in there though. So what states are we from? What states? I love proving this. Somebody said they're from New York. New York, New York. What's the law? What's the law? Dang, I think I done caught New York and California. I got the most stuff about. Here we go. The common law that was in effect on April 19th, 1775 shall be and continue to be the law of New York. This provision was included in the first Constitution of New York and has been continued through every constitutional revision since. What's the law? What else? What other states? California said all men by nature are free and independent and have certain unalienable rights, amongst which are those of enjoying and defending life, liberty, acquiring possessions, protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. This principle is as old as the Magna Carta. North Carolina. What's the law of North Carolina, everybody? What is this? What is this? North Carolina is one of the original 13, so you know what their law is, just like New York. Let me see. Let me see. Let's see which one. Nope, we don't want that one. Here we go. Let's see. Oh, yeah. All right. So since the year 1711, all such statutes and such parts of the common law as were heretofore in force and in use within this territory, the General Assembly of North Carolina, beginning in 1711, had enacted statutes declaring that the common law is and shall be in force in this government. So what's the law of North Carolina? They said that since 1711, it ain't changed. They said we don't obey it, but it ain't changed. We ignore it, but it ain't changed. They can't change it. Not without calling it something else. They'll have to rename North Carolina. They'll have to call it something else. Them boys was nasty when they set this stuff up. They knew what they were doing. I said it a couple days ago. These people weren't like I said they weren't ignorant racists. They were racist, but they weren't ignorant at all. They know exactly what they're doing. They said as long as this place is called North Carolina, they got one law. They said, according to this is the North Carolina Supreme Court, they said the common law is the common law of England as of the date of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. They got one Supreme Court case, two North Carolina Supreme Court case, three North Carolina Supreme Court case. They say the common law as used in their codes, it refers to the common law of England and not of any particular state. They said we don't care about South Carolina, we don't care about Virginia, we don't care about Tennessee. We're talking about North Carolina. North Carolina got a law. And if there was no other state but North Carolina, they said that those parts of the English common law, which had been in force and in use in the North Carolina colony, which are not contrary to the freedom and independence of North Carolina, are to be applied in North Carolina. So what's the law of North Carolina? They said again, they said the Supreme Court of North Carolina said that North Carolina adopted the common law of England and it remains in force. They said it ain't go nowhere. We can't make it go nowhere. They would have got rid of it by now, y'all. They done had a civil war. They done had the War of 1812. If they could get rid of it, they would. They want to. That's why they ignore it. That's why they don't talk about it now. Maryland. I think Maryland and Georgia are the most, they have the most common law history. Maryland, they got the common law like explicitly in their constitution. I've never seen it explicitly in anybody's constitution. Like you'll have to know that these words come or these phrases come from the common law. You'll have to know that a trial by jury comes from the common law. You'll have to know that, okay, the right to bear arms comes from the common law. They said, no. The inhabitants of Maryland are entitled to the common law of England. That's not in any state constitution, y'all. That's not in nobody's state constitution. They said the trial by jury, according to that course of the law, and the benefit of such English statutes as such existed at the time of their first immigration. They said whenever the Maryland colony got there, they said, we got this thing called the common law. That's what I need to do. I have those books when each of the original 13 colonies established the common law in their, because it wasn't easy. Like, they got a memorial in Virginia that says, okay, well, the year 1607, they brought with them the common. They didn't bring no common law in 1607. They couldn't survive in 1607. They had to leave and come back in 1613. They didn't have no common law in 1607. They do that for memorial practice, but that ain't when they got it. That Virginia didn't get the common law till like 1630, something like that. I got books that go over each of the original 13. I need to upload them on Patreon. And they tell you exactly how each of them got it. They had to fight when they first got there because they didn't know how to survive because they weren't from here. They had to learn to, they had to make it. So they were under military jurisdiction when they first got here. They were under governors and mayors and whatever. And then once they got settled and started developing a real colony, then they had to fight for the common law because the judges were wilding. They always been wilding. But the Maryland Supreme Court said that when the English colonists crossed the sea, they brought with them the common law of England. They said the people of Maryland declared their independence from Great Britain. Didn't Virginia say that earlier? They said based on their independence. They said, we're not talking about nobody else. We're talking about Maryland. We're talking about Virginia. They said on August 14th, 1776, they met in Annapolis to form the government of Maryland. And the delegates labored for 3 months and brought forth a constitution and a declaration of rights. And it went into effect on November 11th, 1776. They said Maryland, in the Maryland Declaration of Rights, adopted in 1776, included the proclamation that the inhabitants of Maryland are entitled to the common law of England. We read it earlier. Actually, I still have it up. All right. So they had this thing saying in all criminal trials or all criminal cases, the jury shall be the judges of the law. That's explicit. Yeah, Article 5 of the Maryland Constitution. The inhabitants of Maryland are entitled to the common law of England. Man, y'all should be running them courts up there. I should be able to go to Maryland and it don't be no foolishness up there. But I know that ain't. I heard about Baltimore. Yeah, y'all be wilding up there, right? But it don't get no easier than that. Maryland should be kicking butt and taking names. It don't make no sense. They said the inhabitants of Maryland are entitled to the common law of England, a trial by jury, according to the course of that law and such benefits of English statutes as they existed on the 4th day of July, 1776, which have been found applicable to their local and other circumstances. Yeah, about his dude named Lord Baltimore. See, y'all supposed to be nasty up there with it. All right, somebody said Indiana and South Carolina. I don't have Indiana. I mean, it's the same thing, but I don't have them explicitly adopting the common law or when. But I do have Indiana due process, which is the Magna Carta. They said the guarantee of due process of law is to prevent the state government from exercising by any of its departments arbitrary and capricious power over persons or property. They said the law of the land or due process of law cannot be taken to be the very act of legislation which wantonly deprives a person of his rights. There are rights in every free government which are beyond the control of the state government. Supreme Court of South Carolina said the South Carolina adopted this clause of the Magna Carta into her state constitution. This is actually the Supreme Court of Georgia saying this. They said South Carolina adopted this clause of the Magna Carta into her state constitution. The state constitution of South Carolina declares that no free man of this state shall be taken, imprisoned, disseized of his freehold, liberties, privileges, outlawed or exiled, or in any manner destroyed or deprived of his life, liberty, or property, but by the judgment of his peers or by the law of the land. They said the people of South Carolina asserted the principles declared by the Magna Carta, that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. There you go. So what's the law? Maryland has an encyclopedia of laws. I forgot what it's called. It's called the Maryland Law Encyclopedia. I bet there's some nasty cases up in there. Boy, I be at that library every day. The Maryland Law Encyclopedia. I might have to move to Maryland. They got it in the Constitution, boy. That's nasty. And they say in the Constitution you get to use English statutes or English cases or statutes or whatever. Yeah, English statutes. Come on now. That's nasty. All right. Well, I think I'm going to get off of here if there's no other questions. What's today? Tuesday? I think I'll be on here tomorrow about 6:30 Central Time. Central Time. I got books. What was the book about perfect teeth? What's that dude's name? Gerard Judd. Gerard Judd. He's got it's an old YouTube video. You can barely hear what he's saying, but crank it all the way up in some headphones. And he's got a book. There are probably copies of it on eBay. You probably can download it. I can't see that. Yeah, I brush my teeth with Dr. Bronner's soap, liquid soap, the peppermint kind. Actually, this is not for sale. If I purchase all 3 books, would that save me monies? I don't think so. There's not like a discount thing. I think there's only, well, you get the digital version of the Quartz book for free. Let me see. I don't check that website at all. Shipping is $5. So just add $5 to whatever. Yeah, I think we did this. If you add everything to the cart, it's like 108. Before shipping, yeah. So I'm not good at math, but I think that's like 115, 113. Just go to constitutionacademy.org. There's only 3 books. Constitutionacademy.org. If you don't know the name of the website, you won't be able to order it because it's not like you can't Google it. So if you want to know the names of the books, you got to go to constitutionacademy.org. But you got the Quartz book or the Quartz book, commercial law, and in their own words. This is the new one. This is about sovereignty, citizenship, the T word. So this is the big one. This one's got all type of nasty stuff in there. You got to do your homework on this one. Get the highlighter. You learn this book, you'll be the nastiest dude or lady in your state. Yeah, but constitutionacademy.org. You can't Google these books. Because, I mean, maybe somebody's reselling them. I don't know. But you can't order these books by Googling them. So somebody type, yeah, if you add everything to the court, there's 4 items. One's a digital book, the physical digital book of the courts. So one will say, the other 3 will say physical books. One will say ebook. Altogether, it's 108 plus $5 for shipping. But the big book, this one's 65. The new one. I don't know who you are. I don't know if the camera's backwards either. But the camera's backwards here, so I can't. It's hard to keep it in the middle. And then you got the courts. This one is 25. And then you add the ebook to the cart. The ebook will be free. Or the PDF will be free. And then you got commercial law. You want to learn about the law merchant? The law merchant. All right. But you get this book. This is a nasty book. It's a nasty book. Got some secret info on the back of it. So, all right. We'll try it again tomorrow. Unless y'all got any more questions. Do you think they ignore the common law because of our lack of knowledge or contracts? They ignore the common law because that's the thing that restricts them, and no government likes restriction. Did you ever try to get your passport records? I do have my passport records. It doesn't say anything different. It just says what I sent them. But yes, I did end up getting my passport records. The next type of records, I can't talk about this one. The next type of records I'm getting is what they call the IMF. But I will not be talking about that one because I don't want to come up missing. You ready to join the Patreon if you want to talk about that one. I will not be talking about that on the internet. But yeah, that's the one I'm working on. That one, they say they don't even send that one to you. They say, yeah, don't worry about that. You won't be getting that one, but I'm gonna get it. Yeah, you get that IMF. They say that's what they try to use against you in federal court. So it's called the individual master file. You get that. And they say you know, y'all remember I read that case earlier and it was redacted. They don't tell you all the information that's in that case. They say you get that individual master file back. Black bars all over it because they don't want you to see it. I'm like, nah, you're supposed to send the whole thing. If you're on the Patreon, I put a bunch of podcasts that I found about it. Technically, I was given those. Somebody gave those to me. They're not podcast. I turned them into podcast on the thing. So if you're on the Patreon, everything I've uploaded, and I got 10 episodes on there. I got 6 more I have to upload. I didn't want to annoy y'all with notifications on the Patreon. So I'm taking them I try to do 5 a day. So I don't know how they do this podcast thing, but sort old to new. You want old to new. I tried to put them in order as best as I knew how, but it's a book under each of those episodes. And it's evident. It's just all what they said. It's like my books. I was like, oh, they look just like how my books look. Where it's just, is this it? Yeah, it's just proof of what they saying. Yeah, that's what it's called. It's called homework. So y'all see how I got, let's see. All right, so I got screenshot of a book that they cite or something like that. I cite a book and it's got the screenshot of that book, so I didn't, what I mean. And so yeah, that book, oh man, it's got everything. It's got everything, bro. It's nasty. So yeah, I got more, so it's gonna be a lot of those. It's gonna be about I think it's gonna be 18 of them in all, but that'll be a podcast by itself. and then it's a book under each of those. It's crazy. They got a book for each one they made. These are old, but they're all true. They're all true. For those who are on the Patreon, those books are old. They tried to go after that dude. They called it a tax scheme. I can't say this stuff. But that dude told the truth about everything. And they never convicted him. How to get documents. You should be able to click it and it should say download. Or if you go on the website, yeah, I was to say if you use the website, you should be able to plug in a flash drive or download everything to your computer. I don't know if you can download the audios, but if you can download the audios, download the audios. Maybe I should have uploaded those so if you can't download them. But yeah, listen to them. Listen to them. They say that IMF, that is what they use against us. And they say they lie on everything. They lie on everything. Because they don't really have no, remember, we done read about the sovereignty of the state. So they can't show you how they went from the District of Columbia into Maryland lawfully. They can't show it. It's not possible because it's a lot. You got to read them. You got to listen to them audios. So just take one day at a time. Don't try to listen to everything in one day. Sometimes you got to listen to them things multiple times. And then, like, if you got a free day, okay, I'll have because he goes over the books that he's talking about. So each one is a book. Each one is like 100 pages where he's going, this guy and some other his homeboys are going over each of the things. But the biggest thing is a FOIA request. We have to learn FOIA request. Freedom of Information Act request. So, yep, but that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, listen to the audios. And he tell you, don't believe him. Don't think it's a magical bullet. Don't think it's going, but that's the fight. Whatever that dude talking about is the fight. He go over everything. So, yep. All right, tomorrow, 6:30 Central, 6:30 Central, 6:30 Central. Actually, I probably shouldn't tell y'all this, but I'm about to move. I'm about to move to Florida. So this I don't know what time zone that is in, but I think it's East Coast at that time, I think. So I'm about to get physical with this stuff. I'm trying if I can. I can't guarantee nothing, but I'm gonna try to do something for the 4th of July. I'm gonna try to find a hotel and find who the best caterer is in town, and y'all come in for the 4th of July and we'll buy a piece of land or something. I find that lower court judges are colluding with each other and violating their own law. Yeah, they're all corrupt. We don't have no friends in government. So, yeah, all courts are corrupt. You don't have to debate about it. It's true. They all corrupt. Nobody's your friend. If we don't come together, it ain't going. Yeah, they're all corrupt. The only way is to exit the system. So, all right, tomorrow 6:30. I'm out.